Well, making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Sometimes wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. You want to be where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to be where everybody knows your name. It's brilliant, isn't it? Obviously, that's the theme song from the hit show Cheers, a show which is or was not about a bar. It was about a community. It followed people's lives as they shared each other's joys and each other's struggles. And I think one of the reasons why that show was so successful was because it depicted a community that we would all love to be a part of. A community where people gather with one another who are of one heart and one soul. Where we do not necessarily escape the troubles of life, but we uncover the truth that we share those troubles together. We long for a community which speaks of a collective vulnerability, where we know each other fully, as we are fully known. Of course, long before the neighborhood bar, long before the contemporary coffee shop experience, long before the office cooler, there was a community of those gathered in the Spirit of God to celebrate and to share the resurrection of Jesus. And that community was drastically different than anything else in the world at that time, because it was a community of sharing. It was a community of bold testimony. This is what God is doing. And it was a community filled with grace. And it's that type of community that we are called to be and to live out. So I invite you to pick up your pew Bibles and turn to Acts chapter 4. You can find the reading around page 126 of the New Testament side of our pew Bibles. And all of our readings today deal with the formation of a life-giving community of fellow believers, what we would call today the church. We hear about it in our song, how good and how pleasant it is when brothers and sisters dwell together in unity. There is a sense of God's blessing when people live in that manner. Even our gospel reading, the gospel reading which we normally zero in on what's known as doubting Thomas, but it has as its foundation Christ coming to the disciples and forming them into a body of people who would be equipped to go out into the world and to bear the message of the resurrection. And our reading from Acts shows the development of that community. Now, sometimes when we look at this reading, where it talks about nobody was in need, everybody shared everything, we think, yeah, right. As if. Like, isn't that just kind of unrealistic? Isn't it just a fanciful wish and a dream? One of the things that we need to remember is that the community, that type of community, is not formed by human effort. It is formed in the power of the Holy Spirit. It's true that we cannot bring this about ourselves. And when we try, we fail. Just as the early church did. The very next chapter, you have Ananias and Sapphira who attempt to defraud the community. And it's not because the demands of the community were unrealistic, but it's because they took their focus off the Spirit of God and decided to think about their own image management. And how can I use this community to further my own goals and my own benefit? See, that's not what the community is to be. Verse 32 defines the community in this way. The whole group of those who believed were one heart and one soul. Now, it doesn't mean that they all agreed. We will never do that. Put 5 people in one room, you'll get 7 different opinions. Right? We like different songs. We have different temperaments. Some like action movies, some like romantic comedies. Some like salty food, some like sweet food. Some like coffee, others are wrong. See, we have different opinions of everything. But being one heart and one soul, what it means is that none of those differences get in the way of loving and respecting each other. And we can actually love and respect people because of those differences. They were one heart and mind, not because they were the same on everything, but because they were all united on the one important thing. Let's look to Jesus as Lord. And they desired together to follow Christ's Spirit in life. It's the Holy Spirit that creates the power of the community. And so if we are looking for that type of community that is hinted at with shows like Cheers and other popular television shows, you will never find it unless it is embedded with the Holy Spirit dwelling in the midst of it. And that desire for community, to be where people know our names and we share life together, that desire comes out of the Spirit of Jesus calling us to himself. Because we don't come here for our own plans. We don't come into community for our own missions. The focus, the sole focus, is on Jesus. Jesus who is here, our resurrected Lord, on the worship of his name and the following of his Spirit. And when we do that, it means that the life of the community drastically changes. It is out of the single-hearted focus that the community of faith became a place of giving. No one claimed private ownership of any possession, but everything they owned was held in common. Kind of flies in the face of a world that says you earn your place in this life. And the more you have, the better you are. Now, often when we talk about how this community was formed, and it was a community of giving, sacrificial giving and sharing, we hear this very challengingly. As in, are you telling me that I need to sell everything? But what if we saw this encouragingly? What if this really tells us that the community of faith is the place to go when we need help? That we don't need to hide our need. We don't need to get into the laborsome process of trying to save face. What if we really believed that if we truly and authentically needed something, that God could and God would provide for it through the life of the community? Yes, of course, there's a challenge in that, because we cannot accept that reality and not see how God might use us to aid someone else. I'm currently reading the autobiography of George Mueller, who was a missionary and developed orphanages in Britain, and his whole ministry was not going out and trying to get something, but just allowing God to provide. And his autobiography is testimony after testimony, event after event after event after event of God providing for this orphanage that he had set up. The community coming together in the Spirit of God and just providing for its life. Obviously, that takes a little bit of vulnerability. It takes the ability through the Spirit to not hide who we are or what we have. To actually say, this is what I need. Or to say, this is what I can give. I knew somebody in BC who tried to see everything she had as being something that she was called to share. So she tried to be open to the Spirit of God and listen to the needs of those around her. Not the wants, not the random requests that would come her way, but the actual needs. And then she would try to discern how the Spirit would call her into it, how she could live out the presence of Christ in that place. It takes a different type of focus. Instead of what do I have, to what can I give? you remember in school, or if you've ever been on a committee or